As insecurity spirals out of control in the country, could the internal fights and murders, who can save us from the brink? Could it be the chieftains of military intelligence, which is trying to rein in the criminal elements? On the spot tonight is a panel of 4, including David Pulkol, former External Security Organization Director General, Charles Otia Torit, a security expert, Peter Kankaka, who is a patron Century Border faction, and Fred David Egesa, a private investigator. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. You are on the spot, the three of you, and we'll also be joined by Mr. David Pulkol. And I'm going to begin with you, David Egesa, because you are a former police officer, you're a private investigator, and yet again we have found ourselves in this situation where individuals who are not police officers, they seem to have taken over a role for police officers, but now they seem to have also abused it, and the police, which is supposed to be doing the role of keeping law and order, was unable to apprehend them. And we have seen the military, the internal security organization, coming to do the job of apprehending those they suspect to be having some criminal who are criminally minded individuals. What do you think caused this for us as a city in this country, in Kampala, to reach this level?
Thank you so much. Good evening, viewers. First and foremost, these guys did not abuse anything because they are not trained to handle security. Whoever deployed them, whoever allowed them to act the way they were, to do whatever they were doing, is the one who abused the office. Because these are civilians, many of them of fairly low caliber. Here they come up to, like you say, their trend of coming to the city. They came to scavenge, possibly. Now in the process, they're exposed to authority, they're exposed to power, they are armed, and they are given a very, very broad arena which they have never been trained to handle. So in the situation, you find that when you give such a person such a big space, he has to use it, and in whichever way, because he's not trained to do anything.
Look, border operators have the terrain intelligence, have the social intelligence. They're always everywhere. They know almost every Ugandan, where they stay, where they work, and even for those who or even whom they love. So if you wanted to gather intelligence to keep the security, the peace in the city, you have to work with them.
To be more analytical, let's say that border riding is a good job, fine, but we will not put them in a range of high-class jobs. These are people, if you look at them, they maybe get 20,000, 10,000, 5,000 shillings a day. Look at their way of earning, look at their education, look at their status. Then you have to realize that there is no way you can say that they have the intelligence, unless if they are guided or trained.
What do you mean? Because it does not have, if you are earning 20,000, it does not mean that you cannot gather intelligence. Some of them are in this business not because of circumstances. Some of them are highly qualified, but there's a high unemployment in this country, and Uganda's border kind of economy has pushed them there. Some of them are qualified people.
Fine, they are qualified, but let's look at the job. The job, really, you cannot talk about it as a high-class job. So this, border makes a person even to, you see the way they behave. You see the way they can do anything at any time. Meaning that they themselves, whether highly qualified or whatever, they still believe that they are low caliber employees.
Yes, if they, well, I don't agree, because quite a number of them could have been pushed to do what they are doing by the circumstances, by the Uganda's poor economy, by the unemployment situation, because they have no jobs and they have gone there. I have interacted with some, not all of them. I don't agree with the blanket statement that all of them are low caliber.
No, as long as as long as pressure pushes you to a job, that means that job is, I wouldn't say, they are very useful. They are very important. I don't underrate them. But at the same time, we have to accept that border riding is looked at as not a very high. Would you compare them to teachers? Not. Would you compare them to doctors? Of course not. Would you compare them to engineers? Not. So, meaning that at their own level, unless if well developed and well kind of
okay, before I
designed.
even introduce other panelists to speak on this, haven't we seen the hemorrhage of public resources being stolen by people who are highly qualified in big offices? In fact, we have seen permanent secretaries who have even been taken to Luzira.
Yeah, of course, there, you know, it depends on one whose character and one whose upbringing and one whose aims and objectives as he joins wherever he goes. But what we are trying to say is a situation whereby you use the intelligence, the border people, you have not trained them, you have not oriented them, you have not kind of seasoned them to know that if you have this type of situation, in intelligence you can use people even as small as students, provided you have guided them, provided you have trained them, provided you have oriented them, and lastly, you have to be in charge of all the operations. But you don't just allow them to go and operate on their own.
Okay, before I bring in Charles here, let me have you, Peter Kankaka, because you are the patron of Century Border, which is another faction. But how did we reach this level that we have Border 2010, we have you Century, we have I don't know how many, and that sometimes you are even fighting among it yourselves. So when you are a patron of a border faction, what do you do?
Good evening, viewers. My name is Kankaka Peter, the patron, Century Riders Association. To understand the industry very well, the first thing you need to know is to know that the border industry has become the second largest employer in Uganda. Mostly employing the youth. That is the first thing. You cannot tell us, you cannot underrate, you cannot classify them as illiterates or what. What matters now is that it is the second largest employer, specifically actually the largest employer of young men in this country. Now, what has brought the factions in the border industry? What has created Border 2010? What has created the Century Riders Association? The country, Uganda, allows us to create associations. But the main point here is how an association comes in to take on leadership in a border industry, because everyone in this country has got an association. Probably they have an association. You can wake up and register an association and call it whichever name you call it. But how do you come in to use it as a leadership structure of an industry employing thousands of people? Now, like you're telling us that borders normally fight. The question is why? Because everywhere they fight, even in parliament they fought. We saw them fighting. The biggest question that is not why they fight. The biggest question is the biggest question is that not that they fight. That's not where we should concentrate on. We should have to ask ourselves why they fight. First of all, you asked me patronage. Patronage is guiding a given group that requires probably something like maybe being guidance that would like to be guided in a given section. Now in the industry, the border industry, patronage, first of all, because the industry is self-sustaining, the riders buy their own, the government doesn't take care. First of all, patronage is guiding a rider to obtain a business.
You know, what I have seen, what I have observed, is a degree of impunity among some of the border riders. Should you, God forbid, knock someone, maybe along the northern bypass, and maybe if that person is a border rider, they can come, about 50 of them, they'll block the road, and they can do anything. They can do anything. So you as a patron, how do you rein them in so that they at least remain with some kind of good conduct?
Mr. Moderator, what you call impunity, these people, someone has knocked another one, we call it collective responsibility in border. That's not impunity, it is collective responsibility. When a border and people who operate border are like brothers. Because there is nowhere, even in the transport sector, where they have put maybe someone in charge to take care of them, so they take care of themselves. In case of an accident, the first people to provide first aid are the riders themselves.
If Mr. Kankaka, if I am talking about giving first aid, if I'm talking about maybe taking the person who you suspect to have knocked to the police, that I understand. But you assault, you beat, and somebody can even die. That is not the way.
What matters now, is like the first panelist said, you know, sometimes some behavior depends on who has done it. But as boda, what we call collectively handling something, is that it is boda is a self-help kind of business, where a rider needs to help another rider who has got a problem, and that has come in. They normally come in immediately. You see, Uganda, this is how Uganda operates. A building catches fire somewhere, and maybe fire brigade arrives after 30 minutes. An accident happens on the road, and the rider happens to come very fast, quickly. What you call impunity, we call it something like self-help, being there for each other in the industry, helping our own passengers, I mean our own customers, because in case of anything that has happened to the customer, in case, you know, have you seen boda riders locking someone and running away? Who chases them? Fellow boda riders. Self-disciplinary mechanism happens in the boda industry. In case a boda rider maybe scoops a bag from a passerby, who chases them? Fellow boda riders. Because they would not want to spoil their business with cases of indiscipline of few individuals.
This collective responsibility, Mr. Charles, what do you read in this? Because you're saying sometimes we have to fight for ourselves. There's nobody. Is this an indication of the breakdown of system, that they have lost confidence in the police, they have lost confidence in the other governance structures, so they think they can handle it themselves? And that's what Kankaka is calling collective responsibility, the brotherhood of sorts.
Thanks, Kamara, and good evening, viewers. Kamara, you'd allow me a minute or so to just sort of reset the tempo of this discussion, because I'm afraid that in discussing security, you always get easily dragged to begin to discuss form in security instead of substance. And I want to make clarity on that. And even before I set forth to do that, I want to deal with the issue of language. Recently in the media, and even in ordinary discussions, I'm afraid that the word crime and the word security, in my view, are erroneously being used, sometimes simultaneously, sometimes invertedly. Because crime only makes a component of security. And I'll tell you why. What we seem to see as a crisis in the security sector today, one, could be a crisis, may not be a crisis. The whole issue lies in the philosophy of security as we see it in the current globe, with the elements of globalization, with the elements of geopolitical systems operating around any given state, given the element of statism today. Why am I saying this? The face of security has changed. In the past, and in the recent past, or from 1945 going forward, with the introduction of statism, you know, after the Versailles Treaty, sovereign states concerned themselves with their borders, within and then anticipation of what is coming out. What are the push factors today? It's all a different ball game. One, we have new aspects. You have, for instance, the environment. Climate change has become part of the broad definition of security. You have technology, which is fast and rapid changing. You have food security. So, in essence, the element of security has moved, and security minders, this is where they are stumbling. It has moved from physical security to soft security. Today, any security officer, when dealing with a person, you have to grapple with both the man in his physical form and his mental form. A vivid example is, for instance, see the training arena of terrorists today. And even coming back home, see the psyche of the border riders. See the element of vigor and mobism amongst the youth. So the biggest question for anybody concerned in security should be asking yourself, okay, maybe from the last National Security Review, what have been identified as the threats? What have we defined as objectives? What have we framed as policy? This is what we should be interrogating. So in essence, what is happening with the borders? What we are seeing as heightened crime. And I will again insist that particularly the media that frames public opinion, the media that guides mental thoughts, because it persuades thinking towards a certain direction, ought to be conscious in differentiating some of these elements. They may look small, because it's so easy to say that this insecurity, or I mean the crime that we are seeing has heightened and is therefore threatening security. I may not want to accept that. For instance, for purposes of argument, the government in power would tell you, we have secured our borders inch to inch. We have secured every soil. And credit be given, it is true. You may not challenge that. So where does the argument shift? The argument then shifts in, okay, you have a defense policy. You have set objectives. If you are saying every person must be secure everywhere, wherever they are, and apparently they don't seem to be so, because it's evidenced by 1, 2, 3, like we are saying, the crime waves. Then we begin to get to ask ourselves, what are the push factors? What is triggering this? And again, Kamara, there are many. Unemployment, as we're talking about it, like you said, could be malaise somewhere. Is the economy working? Is it not? And even when you come to that, when you come to that, it's again broad. So, in a nutshell, what am I saying? It is important at this stage that we try to understand. We first of all need to accept that the borders are here. And they form part of this body politic of society, of the economy. Then 2, we need to subject it to further questions. Why are they acting the way they are doing? Why is it? Because if, for instance, you spoke to agriculturalists, they will tell you the young men prefer to come to the street to do border, then pick seeds to go and grow. Again, it may not be enough to come out with brilliant.
So you seem to suggest that what we have seen does not really threaten state security in some way. But I want to ask, when you see this head of police, the Inspector General of Police, appearing before a parliamentary committee and saying, this group are my people, they are helping me fighting criminality and things like that. And when you hear the confessions, and you see another agents of security going in to arrest them, and before that you have seen senior police officers who have also been arrested by internal security, by chieftains of military intelligence, they are also in jail. And you actually seem to see some kind of individuals, high-ranking officers, who seem to be at the loggerhead. Doesn't that really cause worry?
I don't think so. I'll explain why. Again, looking at our neighborhood, looking at the ecosystem. You see, first of all, Uganda, geographically, where does it find itself? we're in the Great Lakes region. Currently, global security analysts, political analysts, define this region as one of the most fragile. And fragile in the sense that so much security and peace gain has been made, but if not managed well, could easily be reversed. Take our neighbors, Kenya. The hooliganism in the transport industry did not start yesterday with the border. In Kenya, it grew and it became a mass movement, the Mogik. If anybody took interest in understanding what the Mogik were, you find that it was a quasi-fusion between political mediocrity, individual extrapolations, and this the security. And they take advantage of this. But like I said, if you ask the psyche, if you look...
So hasn't the border 2010 more or less also taken the route of the Mungiki, the Kenyan Mungiki style?
That is the worry. That is the worry.
So wasn't the Mungiki in Kenya really threatening state security at one point before Njenga Maina was put in prison?
You see, that is why I said that it is important. We need to be cautious. When we are talking about security, what does it entail? Because if you looked at that broad definition I gave you, if you asked yourself, what is Uganda's food readiness? You can find a certain percentage. If you ask yourself, what is Uganda's credit worth? How are we rated internationally by the World Bank, the IMF? What is the political rating? Because all these things matter. You see, by the time a country's security breaks down, it's not about a few guys throwing stones on the street.
It increases the risk profile. But let me, before Mr. Kankaka, let me bring in David here. You're a former police officer, you're a private investigator, and we have seen senior police officers serving. They are still in battling some court cases. Now, these, I'm told the border men, 2010, some of them were so powerful that other police officers could fear them. So, if I understand there are always security meetings, joint security meetings that take place every week, how are these people likely to discuss about security matters when they meet in the security meetings regarding what has happened now? Because there's a security minister, there's an IGP, maybe the Minister of Defense, there's a CMI boss, and all of them are supposed to meet somewhere weekly. How are they supposed to handle their meetings, in your view?
Thank you so much. I think what we're trying to do here is to interrogate the domestic, what we call domestic security. There may be other, security is broad. It could be food security, others, whatever. But here we're talking about domestic security. I think we're doing fairly well with state security. The state is fairly safe. Our borders are very safe. The problem lies around the security and safety of the individual Ugandans on their streets, in their houses, as they move on the streets. So that situation of making sure that they are safe and their property is safe. So that's why I will call him Professor the way he was driving us. I just want to kind of create a small and minute point around internal security or maybe domestic security. What we are saying is there could be squabbles in security, and somehow when you're in a kind of forum, you may not, if you have the same mind and you are agree about everything, you are not kind of bickering here and there. That means that we the Ugandans may not benefit out of so it will be a situation of a conspiracy. If all generals sat and they have one mind, then you'll have a situation where they will possibly exploit, possibly cheat, possibly drive this country where we may not want to go. But I'm happy that there is conflict. Where there is conflict, there is counterintelligence, there is counter-checking. You have to work so hard so that you are not criticized. So in the process, you improve. That's what I'm. So Charles Tolit, this is a good thing.
Absolutely.
That they seem to be fighting. They seem not to agree all the time.
And I'm not sure they're really fighting. We need to be sure about this. Yes, we have seen utterances in the media, but God forbid. You see, how bureaucracy works is that bureaucracy ought to drag. Bureaucracy ought to drain. Bureaucracy ought to provoke. If that is happening, then I think this country is secure.
Okay, let me bring in Mr. Kankaka here. Sometimes, do you feel let down by the police, by the leadership, by the structures that we have, that sometimes when you have a complaint, you cannot seek redress, and then you get your issues solved? And that's why the border have created something that maybe Mr. Tolit wants to call the mobism.
Now, first of all, I totally disagree with my fellow panelists. You cannot tell me that Uganda is safe, not at all, with the instances of Kijambia. Unless on this panel, I'm sitting with people who live in Kololo alone. You just go to downtown. There is an issue of Kijambia everywhere. People are being killed.
Pang welding
Pang welding goons everywhere. The people are dying in Nansana. They are dying in Entebbe, where the state house is. So you tell me we are safe. Now, in the border
they are trying to show you state security and individual security.
In state security and in individual security, probably I did not understand the distinction, but it's all about safety. First, why would you secure borders without securing the citizens in the borders you're protecting? That's the first thing. Now, to bring in the border, the people I speak for, I'm involved in this thing. Probably they don't know about it, but let me tell you what is inside the border industry. First of all, police, the Uganda police, is directly involved in the running of the politics of the border industry. Secondly, this is the most fragile industry. Like he has said, they have low education.
So you are a patron or one of the faction. How is police directly involved in running your organization?
Thing is the history of creating leadership in the border system. The history is police came in 2006 and created the police started the factions. It's police that started the factions.
So even your faction?
Not my faction right now. Then I will bring in my faction now. Yes, I will bring in it. In 2006, by then the police, Alan Kasinji, commissioned traffic wardens who were picked from border riders to help in traffic and fighting crime without assigning them a salary. Then he allowed them to extort money from people. That is 2006. Allowed them to extort money from riders in the name of allowing them to impound motorcycles that maybe had created small crimes and confiscating them, impounding them, and keeping them at their compounds, not at the police compound. That was the first mistake. I want to take you through the history. In 2006, that was when the factions began. Yes, one faction was what was called Kuboka, Kampala Union of Border Cyclists Association, commissioned by Alan Kasinji. After that, in 2009, after the works of that group, which was an association, commissioned by a police officer, 2009 the group became unpopular. When it became unpopular, riders mobilized themselves and blocked the president, trying to show discontent with this Kuboka. You know what happened? The Inspector General of Police ordered the immediate closure of the association offices everywhere. He convened a meeting to meet border riders in March in 2010. After 1 week of closing other offices of the leadership of border, by then, if I could remember, 1 week later, was it the town clerk from Kampala, by then it was KCC, the town clerk, announced fresh elections of border leaders because the first offices were closed, alleging that they were extorting money. The reason why they were closed is that they were alleging they were extorted. They were extorting what? Money. Police intervened. When police intervened, it created a fresh group. 2010.
Okay.
Let me finish this point. Now, these people, this thing is, I don't know what you mean with people being secure, because the magnitude of this border thing reaches to an extent of civilians battering civilians. You have seen people cutting others with pangas.
Okay, hold on.
Hunting others with
all right, Peter, hold on to your point,
Yes,
because you're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll also be joined, I suppose, by David Pulkol, who's the former external security director, and then we get deep into this discussion. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Mr. David Pulkol, Mr. Fred David Egesa, Mr. Peter Kankaka, and Mr. Charles Otia Tolit. David, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you.
David, let me ask this. The cloak and the dagger games among the security agencies seem to have reached the pinnacle. What do you read in this?
What can one read in this before I give what I read in it? But it's possible to read state capture or security apparatus capture, or some security to amend it, some security apparatus captured by criminal elements, or the criminal elements within the security services linking up with the criminal elements in society to treat the country to this type of menu, which is very discomforting, disquieting, and because any government worth its name, its main purpose is to protect life and property of citizens. The bottom line. And that's why citizens pay taxes. That money is expropriated by parliament, people's representatives, and allocated to different sectors. And therefore, money is given to a government which has been elected to establish security organizations to secure life and property of citizens, secure stability of the country, so that we can go about our business, our work, whatever you are, you sleep, you wake up, and so forth, knowing that there are people whom you have paid for to do this job. Like for me was a glorified night watchman, okay, as a head of Director General of External Security, the ears, the eyes of the country called Uganda on its external borders, and make sure that whatever threat comes from external, are we equal to the task? Do we know who they are? What's the structure of the enemy? What is the organization? What's the command structure? What is resources? What's equipment? What is weaponry? So how does it move money, its command structures, and so forth? Which wants to threaten us?
Boy, you had quite a
you know,
a lot of.
I'm just trying to say.
I'm looking at the classified expenditure.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say that out there, you must put agents, you must penetrate these would-be enemies without them knowing you are there. You are within them. And therefore, how do you use undercover agents? How do you use static intelligence? How do you do who are mobile? How do you run even agents who are not known? How do you finance it? How do you reward them? Because they are not citizens. They have no loyalty to Uganda. And yet they must give you that information which Uganda needs badly. So what kind of relationship do you establish and do you maintain? And then your staff whom you have to deploy when they die in the line of duty for the country, how do you take care of them? Or those agents who have penetrated and they die inside the enemy, how do you take care of them? And those who survive, when they come back, how do you take care of them so that none of them talks? Because it was very important for us to nip this in the bud. And citizens woke up in the morning, there was nothing. Even if there was a planned coup, citizens will never know what we did in the night. They even don't know. They wake up in the morning and they're going about their business. It wasn't our duty to speak. It wasn't like now that everything is transacted there in the papers. So what is going on? So therefore, if you use certain criminal elements to a ring of those who are hijacking vehicles and stealing vehicles, for example, and you get thieves within the vehicles ring there who are stealing.
But David,
so then how you manage them
David,
even
what
after?
we are saying, is it not just mere criminality? Is this state insecurity or criminality?
You see, but the problem now is, when I was coming in, I heard the comrade from Boda Boda said we were there legitimate business people who were not formed by the state. And then the state came and created its own structures, its own creatures. These are artificial creation. What about the 2010 is a construct, is a product, an output. It was molded in a workshop in some security organization, and therefore constructed, financed, and even border supplied. And so there are those, like this, you saw people welding sticks. We were saying, who are these getting out of Central Police Station? You know, what are they called? Kiboko Squad. Just like the other day you saw people were beating border men and police are there standing. You were saying, who are these? And they said they were investigating. Have you seen the report? So if the police is involved, no, in fact, I'm so sad that we're even saying the police. It's not the whole police. The Uganda police is so innocent. They're sons and daughters of Uganda, brothers and sisters, our cousins, they are there. But there's a particular component of that police that even the Equal Opportunities Commission recently produced and said, it's smelling bad. How come all the DPCs are from this district, Chiruhura, Kisoro, Ntungam, 80 whatever percent? That report, has it been discussed by Parliament? So this business of individuals going in and changing security apparatus, and the Constitution says these national institutions should have a national character. When I went to ESO, and I found 75% was only from one part of Uganda, I had to come back 1 month to the president and say, no, this smells bad. Smells bad. I can't head such an organization, which is suffering from elephantiasis. So and therefore, I was allowed to restructure.
They didn't have competence. Is that
because
what
now,
you're saying?
if you deploy them and they all speak one language, you deploy them in Yei, in close to our border there in Kajokeji, for example, in Magwi. What language will they speak there? For them, they are used to eating their whatever and drinking their milk. But what restaurants
I don't want to take that route, David,
like for
but
example,
what I know is that they can be in one place, but they can have competence.
No. Listen, Chief.
Yes.
The strength of this intelligence organization is not at the headquarters. It is the place of gathering this intelligence. Your penetrative capacity to get that information which they don't want the state to have is not available. So now when you get it, then what is at the headquarters is simply analysis and putting it together. But the problem seems to be that while Kale Kaihura in parliamentary committee acknowledged when he was said, who's Chitata? Who is Boda in detail? That they helped us. So he was a tongue-tied. Is he a trained officer? What rank is he? Is he a military man? No, he's LC1. LC1? Have LC1 elections taken place? Who elected him? When were the elections take place? What you have is NRM primaries setting out his candidates for LC1. Does that make him LC1? He's simply a candidate. Must you use him and elevate him to this level? And if he's not a trained officer, that weapon is carrying. This man is leading. These structures and so forth. Why is it taken so long? So what I'm saying is that the criminals seem to have found that the state is badly in need of staying in power. So if we can politically help it within the border industry to stay in power, then we will sleep on the same bed and become comrades. Then we use that cover to do our criminality. And because they are helpful politically against Besije, against who, against all these Amama and so forth. Now, the Besije you are against, the Amama you are against, the opposition you are against, the Muntu you are against, the Pulkol you are against. That is a legitimate opposition provided for in the Constitution. In fact, for you to undermine political, that's why they put there the leader of opposition in the Constitution. It's funded for. That's why in the parliament there's a section for opposition, there's for government. It's funded for. Now, when you use state money, taxpayers' money, to construct these apparatus, illegitimate bodies, which have no locus in law, they have no position, no standing in law, and then you now appended them as an annex to the police, you just spoil the name of the police for nothing. Okay. So there must be departments which are linked to these, whom we must hold responsible. Let me bring in Charles Tolit here. When criminality reaches that level,
like we have seen in Kampala and the rest of Uganda. We have seen the murders of Muslim clerics. We have seen the murders in Entebbe, the murders in Wakiso. We've seen senior police officers arrested and all this kind of thing. As a police spokesperson gunned down in broad daylight. Doesn't that start to sort of threaten the security of the state?
And let's isolate these criminals.
Well,
leave the rest of the police force, but
Okay.
go for the
would-
criminals, Chief, within the police force.
I appreciate David Pulkol's submission. There is definitely substance in what he has just said. It gives a very good educative environment on what we should be looking out for, and as citizens, what you'd call civic awareness, what we shouldn't allow happen. But if you relate it to this, and specifically to your question, yes, I do accept that when you begin to have some of these pinnacles beginning to show, rear the head, the killing of a police officer, the assassination, which almost looks systematic, of the Muslim clerics, all these then, to me, boils down to one question. The security officers at the time, the security managers of the country, need to pull themselves to ask the right question. Because you see, that is also a big challenge. Just like we are debating this issue of form substance, crime versus security. Because if you don't ask the right questions, then you're likely not to get the right answers. Our colleague from the border industry has pointed out that these groups have since time been formed. And I'm curious about that. I would want to ask a further question. Why would the politics of the time, instead of inwardly concentrate on the party structures, why would it want an extra pair of hands from an informal group, probably largely unconscious, and excuse me for my language, but if you looked at formal structures, you wouldn't capture the border. He again mentioned another thing that makes us curious. He says, I know, true, today the service sector is, I think, the second highest earner to GDP. I'm not sure about the figures of borders. So true, that causes alarm. But I think that alarm should only allow security managers begin to ask the correct questions. Because systematic criminology is said that can threaten any security. But look at it this way. In the ecosystem, there are other push factors we need to look at. Look at this case of the Kitatas. They are now talking about some Congolese. And you know that has been an issue here for a long time that probably not even the citizens are discussing, or even the managers of this country. We have a long stretch, one of the longest stretches of a porous border. That causes lots of challenges. It would become complicated if criminal gangs in Kinshasa or in Kisangani begin to link up with criminal gangs in Kampala and in Nairobi. But whether that is happening, I'm not sure. So, again, to an extent, yes, this causes fear. But true to the word, like I pointed out, it would be important at this stage to try to properly comprehend one central question. Is the drive of this heightened crime directly related to security or insecurity of the country? Or is it simply a wave of crime related to other social, economic factors? That we need to understand.
The reason why, because he's failing to understand why a state, why a party like NRM would want to have NRM in police, NRM in border, NRM in the army, NRM, instead of using its own party structures. Okay, why would it recruit, why would it want the help of Are the party structures weak to deliver? That you need to use the RDC, the DPC, the regional police commander, the chitatas, and so forth to deliver. And now, when there is convergence of interests, yes, the other day you saw, I'm giving you removal of age limit. What are you giving me? Once the whole state becomes transactional, I give you 7 years. Okay? Now, you don't know what deals have been cut or not cut by these criminal elements in working with the security agencies. Ordinarily, how are they rewarded? Are they rewarded in terms of money, in terms of vehicles? How does they say, when they have worked with you successfully? What's the reward system? Is the reward system that you will continue to commit a crime here, I will look this side? Is that your reward? Is that the reward that I've given you my number? If anybody disturbs you, call me. Is that the reward? And therefore, how can somebody commit a crime, murder and so forth, endlessly, and then up to now, you've not caught them? In a country called Uganda, with LC1, LC2, LC3, with a PISO, Parish Intelligence Officer, with a GISO, with a DISO, with a RISO, with a, with a DPC, with a police station. How does it occur? And then you say, these ones have been, we have arrested them, they are here. And then when they reach court, what do they say? Your Lord, I was only asked by the IGP to agree to implicate these people. Otherwise, we are innocent. They promised to pay me money. Okay. Now, I started with the one who was conflicted with me over my girlfriend. Like that one there. You saw this drama in court.
Okay, Mr. Kankaka.
Honestly, who can we fool around? Is that the way to deliver security to Ugandans?
As a representative of a given faction and a representative of the border industry, the border industry is the reward. The riders are the reward to whoever has done a job and has
deliver political goods.
You remember when Dr. Besigye started the walk to work, the IGP confessed in Parliament and said, these people of 2010 helped us to fight the walk to work. Did he mention how they were paid? After the government using them to build, maybe politicians using border riders to build their political careers, they don't reward them with anything because border riders don't have even a salary. They operate. They are allowed to operate anyhow. What they end up doing like
traffic
this.
Rules.
Now, after them serving, they release them. They release their monsters to go and extort money from the riders.
You had a faction. How are you sure that your members are not also serving in criminal areas? And also, how have you been working with, for example, Border 2010?
In the first place, Border 2010 is just an association registered and owned by 10 people. Just registered
shareholders
and owned by just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people. Now, border leadership is in 5 divisions of Kampala. Each division consisting of more than 80 people on the cabinet of the division. Now, for me, who heads a given faction, first of all, we came together voluntarily to fight this because we wouldn't be helped by the state.
You came to fight what?
We came to fight the criminality in the border industry. Secondly, we came to raise our voices to be heard. To be heard because this is what happens.
So there was a failure by the security agencies, by those who are supposed to fight criminality to do their job.
Not even.
So you came to help police?
Not even the failure of the police. This is
fighting crime is not your job.
Now the fighting crime is not our job.
They're spoiling their name.
Collective responsibility. Like I said first. Now look at this scenario. You have seen people being beaten and what? And when we go to pursue a given case in police, it's not followed. And you hear this word. Me, I have been at police following a given cases. And you hear that Kitata, the patron of Border 20, has sent for the file. When you go to police, they don't help you. Now, my main point is how where has the government...
So you, when you failed to get help, you decided to make your own faction that can fight criminality.
Such that we created a group that can raise voices, because no one wants to listen to the border, and this is how we have been doing.
Isn't this the beginning of anarchy?
Now this
well, they speak on radio, they speak on TV, they speak on
this
newspapers.
is what I'm telling you now.
Meetings
You see,
to voice,
politicians,
their voices heard.
Politicians, including Besigye, including the ruling party, want border riders in front of their caravans when they are looking for, when they are building their political careers. After guiding them through hardships with the looking for votes, they dump them. After dumping them, the border leadership and those who used them, especially this regime, has unleashed its monster to go to the public and extort. Now, when people now see what has been happening, someone finds you with a motorcycle in the morning, asks you for an identification card. Says, are you a rider? Yes, you must identify yourself. Secondly, he asks you, I have a national ID, which is a legal document you can have. He says, this is a national ID. He says, I don't want that one. I want our association identification card. He impounds your motorcycle, takes it at a private place, not at the police, takes you along with it, and he detains you in a private cell.
So, Mr. Kankaka, you are saying you started censuring
That's why they were celebrating recently.
To stop this, to fight
we
this.
Started Border Central Riders Association, where voluntary riders that were battered by whoever calls themselves the leaders of the border would collectively raise their voices to be heard by whoever. And thank God we have been heard. Because without Century, 2010 wouldn't be checked. Why? Do you know that KCCA was using Border 2010 to demolish structures in Kampala? When there was the decongesting town and moving kiosks by the roadside.
They are on
Do
hire,
you know that
on
2010 has been used to beat the opposition? Do you know that 2010, the same organization is behind the criminality? Ask me, why is it that for every murders that are happening in Kampala, why are motorcycles used? Don't you think it brings a worry? Because the passengers would not now, our customers cannot want to use a motorcycle because it's been used to kill Kawesi. Now when such a thing is not investigated, no report has come, and border, they know every corner of the town. I'm talking about something others assume, but I'm talking about something that riders have seen. They do. Now the IGP at one time called us in a meeting and said, could you guys help me to do the neighborhood watch thing? Because you have stages almost everywhere. We tried. He creates a channel of communication where you get intel, you feed it to a given security organization. And you see, do you know what has spoiled? As the IGP asks for intel, another big man somewhere in his organization also asks for intel, another and asks for intel, and in return, they exchange.
Start selling intel.
They start selling intel. If they fail to get money for that intel, this government, they normally say we don't have funds. You know what they do?
All right.
Is to send these people back to their own people.
David Agesa, what do you make of this?
Well, summing up whatever, what I would like to say is that security is not a one-man's game. And security should not, politics and security are two different things. All the parties, opposition and the ruling party have people. Now, robberies and all sorts of crimes do not target people as by their parties and colors. A thief will not ask you of your orientation and where you belong. Now, I think if we are to be objective, we have to look at even as we discuss, what are our objectives? What do we want to achieve? Where do we want this country to be? That's what I'm saying. That, like I said before, that I'm happy that there is conflict between the generals who have been deployed to manage security. I'm happy that possibly now policing and intelligence and investigation is no longer a one-man's job, because before it was Kale's job only, and all other generals were in abyss or sleeping. I'm happy that some other generals are being woken up to realize that if they don't work very hard, we may slide back into the bottom two where the public felt unsafe and possibly raised and got issues with the government.
Yes, but so, before we take a break, Tolit, I have seen when you look at some of areas that are insecure, for example, you'll see evidence that crime is playing out under class stratification. The wealth and powerful figures in areas like Kololo, Naguru, Bugolobi seem to be safe. But look at Nigeria, look at Namugongo, look at Chalwajala, look at Chianja, look at those areas, look at Nansana. Why? And I'm not saying that the people should go to Kololo and should go to Naguru, but I've seen that stratification.
They have the capacity.
Yeah, I think that stratification is taking a very, very, what would you call it, an organic form, an organic development of the society we are living in. And true to the word, that's why in my introductory remarks, I hinted towards globalization. Capitalism is here with us. Capitalism is here. This is a market economy. Those who can pay an extra bucks have an additional security. But that ought not to be the norm, like David had pointed out. Certainly, our security organs are publicly funded, and they have no reason not to secure us and our properties. And like again I said, moving away from the form debate, for instance, if you ask me honestly, these border, Kitata, for me, in my view, I think they're overrated. Kitata shouldn't even be a point of debate. For me, why Kitata even gets space in the newspaper surprises me. Because, let me tell you, I have been observing, say for instance, key elements to security, and David may know this, like expenditure. Globally, America from about 1914 took the mantle of global policy. Today, there are difficult questions America may not answer. For instance, look at the war in Syria. 6 years now. Nobody can come to a concrete resolution of that issue. It's not that America has become any less powerful than probably the rise of Russia or China. America is financially struggling. The question we would want to ask, and probably the Minister of Security and the other leadership should probably come to answer or make firm propositions, is the funding of security adequate? You know, that could be the variations we're seeing, that those that can make an extra contribution probably are securing themselves. And those, because there are also other factors at play. For instance,
is there a fair allocation of the resources? Because resources could be allocated in one sector.
But
not even that.
Lacking.
Not even that.
It's going for apartments, going for private.
That is an element, David, which is true.
Yeah, like
but you see, for instance,
pads in their palaces.
I saw a recent report of King's College London trying to show expenditure forms in Africa, security in Africa. Apart from North Africa, for the last almost 30 years or so, all these African states are stuck within a limited budget. And even our partners, the Western partners, the European countries, I think they need to be persuaded that the environment here has changed. Like for instance, Uganda per se lives in a very fragile region. We have taken in refugees en masse, and probably without both financial and human resources. You know,
almost 2 million Sudanese refugees here.
Yes. So
and yet Israel is fighting with 40,000 African refugees. I'm told they're supposed to bring them to Uganda.
There are new variables at play. They are new variables at play.
40,000.
And the entire population needs to be persuaded to move, to begin to look at these things this way. Because, for instance, people are willing to pay for private schools. Why can't we move to look at a properly regulated private security system? It is happening elsewhere.
that we have so many private security organizations. David, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'll come back with you there, and then you can tell us what you have to say. But I'll also be opening the line so that Ugandans who are watching this program from anywhere in Uganda or abroad can tell us what they think about how we can stop criminality, but also remain secure within our borders. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest tonight are Mr. David Pulkol, Mr. David Egesa, Mr. Charles Otiatlit, and Peter Kankaka. And we're looking into the issues of criminality and state security in some way, because I think they affect the security of the state. You had an issue.
Yes, I was trying to...
Peter, you need to know that Mr. Hassan Kasinje is saying he's never been involved into this border saga. I've just gotten a message from him. So you may need to put your record straight. Okay.
Okay, so I wanted the viewers to say from now on, when you pull from the international, which Tolit took us to, and back home here, the discussion seems to be that once upon a time, during our own life here now, our own government goals shifted to staying longer against what the Constitution allows, or winning an election by whatever means and stay in power. So they devised, there are those lieutenants around the president, these trusted blue-eyed boys and girls, had to devise ways of keeping Muzee happy and winning all the time. And therefore, they decide now certain strategies and institutions, and came now, this, then came now Chiboko Squad, came now, just like Kalangal Action Plan. There were a lot of a proliferation of this Popular Intelligence Network. There are a lot of a proliferation of security organizations that you can't even trace where they are. And therefore, these individuals manning the formal state organs created informal state organs. And the interaction between the formal and the informal is what has landed us here. When the informal assume an upper hand, and even to a point where even the ordinary police officer who are doing their job, playing by the rules, being overruled by the chitatas, the informal, being overruled by these informal people that you don't know how they came in. And because they can threaten even a police officer and say, look, if you don't do this, I'll cause your transfer. And tomorrow the transfer comes. So now when you find that the Tumkundes, one arm of security, and CMI and UPDF are now seeming to be asserting themselves. So this is not the way a national security is constructed. This is not the way a national security system is run. This one is a recipe for disaster. So now they want to bring order back. And by picking now these criminal elements and therefore putting their bosses, because they are linked to particular officers, putting those on the run.
They are quartermasters.
Because if somebody says, I am the state, and the state is me, and now he's under cuffs, and he's now a suspect. That's why I was saying the other day that our police force now seems to be, if it was a person, would be a patient who's suffering from multiple organs failure. Because the one dealing with professional standards, under arrest. The one dealing with narcotics, the one dealing with what? The one dealing with special. So now, if all these critical units of the police, one was a kidney, one was a kidney, one was a liver, the other one was a heart. And now, when all this failed, so they are now being arrested and we're using machines now to keep it breathing. And yet inside there, they are fine officers, very good. When you look at the villages, they maintain law and order in those small outposts, in the districts, in the regions, and so forth. But there are particular departments, heads within the headquarters here, which have been captured by political interest, first and foremost. And as the criminals then are servicing those political interests, then they also service their own goals.
Charles Tolit, we have seen individuals appear on television and say, I am Kifesi, I have done ABCD, I was sent by such and such people, and they continue to work. And you wonder, and these may be sent.
And the other one is in jail.
To just come and, I mean, are they not playing for the gallery? Isn't the drama really? Can that happen? Because somebody stands and because in the city and says, this is who I am and this is what I've done. Yes. And they continue to live in Kampala.
They have amnesty.
Kamara, you actually used the good word. And I think this is playing to the gallery. I'll tell you that what is happening here like I said before, I gave you the example of Mugik. It's not typically new in the history of political manifestations. You remember, in South Africa, none other than the wife of the noble Nelson Mandela ran a ragtag
football team.
You know, the Nelson Mandela Football Club, and it was even tied to his name. But at the end of the day, we unearthed all sorts of things that this group was doing. The point here is that just at what stage shouldn't politics morph with mobs, so to call them? And I think for me, in this case, that's why I was insisting that in asking the right question, if we take this as an issue of crime per se, then those directly in charge of crime, the minister in charge of security, the police, should come out and rein on these people. Because, for instance, like we are saying, playing to the gallery, I have done lots of research within public service. It could be having challenges, but I think the public service is still fairly intact. Like David pointed out, there are good people in the police. There are good people in the intelligence organizations. There are good people in KCC and all these places. So,
even the
you see, the other question, even in the border. The other thing we might want to understand is, for instance,
criminals.
Why is the epicenter of this drama in Kampala? Because there is border down in our home in Kochgoma. There is border in Koboko. There is border in Swam, in Kotido. You see, this border thing, really, in my view, why I say it has no serious impact to the security of the country is that you can't give a national character to it. Kitata beyond the Bududa, or not Bududa, Mbalala here in Mukono. Kitata beyond the Luwero. Who knows him? Can he call shots? Can Kitata wake up here and say border in Arua? But the other element to that is that, are there other Kitatas in this region?
In those other places.
This is what we might want to understand.
Peter, are you the next Kitata?
I would not want to associate myself with that name either. But let me tell you, like you're analyzing, is there another Kitata in Arua? And you're asking, why are these things in Kampala? Kampala is the central business district. It holds almost, our economy stands on Kampala. All your political offices are in Kampala. You can't underestimate someone who is destabilizing a capital city of a given country. That one cannot happen. And let me tell you, this border thing you're seeing as battering normal riders goes beyond riding to creating a political system that is going to govern you next, whether you are the ruling party or you are in the opposition.
Kingmakers.
They try to be kingmakers. Now let me tell you, do you know how much a border stage costs? Border 2010 was a mass fund mobilization structure for someone preparing himself for presidency, if you don't know. Secondly, a border stage costs between just opposite. Just ask people opposite NTV how much they paid for that. You know where it has gone? Border stages along this road cost 2.5 million. Where did that money go? The president funded.
So every border guy who across the Serena.
Across Serena
Who
pays to
individual
rider to be allowed there, to park there. You must pay a membership fee just to buy a plot where you park your vehicle. An amount above 500,000. Now, when you talk about Arua, no one can afford that much in Arua. Someone is interested in Kampala because he can mobilize funds so quickly. Secondly, Secondly,
And
the
they pay that
president
where?
came
To city
in.
council or to...
It is paid to an individual.
Oh.
80% shared by Kitata and his leaders at division level. No accountability, no structure, and that's what has been done from stages. You must pay membership
That's why they
fees,
celebrate
monthly
when the
membership
oppressor
fees.
is removed.
You must buy an identification card in an amount of above 50,000. Now, secondly, what confuses the whole thing now is, after extorting that money from people, no one comes in. Thirdly, the president came sometime and used a boda boda in his campaign. Do you know how much the president put in a boda boda 2010 circle for those people to develop themselves? When the president sent 200 million to a boda boda association, that's when Abdallah Kitata built his first house. His first house from a rented house. Secondly, the president sent 150 motorcycles to help the riders to advance around town and provide intel. He was giving them a job to find a living. You know where they are? Kitata sold them and erected his first rentals. Find out where his rentals are. Where did he get all this money? Where did he amass all this wealth? The person who claims he was just trading in maize. Can maize raise all the structures he had? Now, it comes to a big political system where someone else who is preparing himself for a big office of this nation uses the informal sector, first of all, to raise funds and keep them in a given hidden account. We know these things. And gives a certain small percentage, gives this man who is his mobilization figure, in the name of just releasing him to do the border, and then he gives him security. He has guns following him. Now, what do you expect from a rider, a simple rider? What do you expect from a simple rider?
Okay.
Secondly, let me finish up with this on
this.
Yes. Let me finish up with this on this. Then here comes security giants, the generals who govern security organizations. They look at Kitata as the only source of intel they need, because for them they can't effectively sit in air conditioners and they don't have access to the ground. Now Kitata comes in and hoodwinks them that I will provide you with the intel. What has been happening in town? He creates a situation in the city, artificially creates it, comes and reports to the authorities. He's given money and he removes his own creation. He walks home with a bag of money.
Now, this is serious because you saw about 28 women dying in Entebbe. Kale went there about that. Tumkun has been camping there and so forth. But the day the president went there, just sitting on a chair and holding his pen and writing, whatever the Wananchi were telling him, up to now the parcel is, it stopped.
Exactly.
Why did it stop? What did the president do? Did he make any arrests?
Mr. Priko, when
prosecute some to court? Were cordon and search operations done? Or were the wrong elements picked up? Because the other day, security wrote a brief to Parliament and gave the Minister of Internal Affairs to go and read. And he said, this is Illuminati. But the president goes, just like that, it stops. So are these criminals lockable? And that you can open and lock? And now that the president has come, you withdraw your criminals who have been killing those women.
And with the
should
IGP,
the women's lives be traded just simply like this?
And when the IGP camped in Nansan and the murders stopped.
The magical solution, what happened? What is the action taken? Now then you see, these are serious issues. Did the president throw money into the situation like he always throws money, like you saw in Greater Massacre, 10 million? Is that enough to quieten this thing? What did the president do? Now, if it takes the president to come and quieten this situation which is artificially created,
Exactly.
in order, was it just to allow the age limit to pass? And if Muse goes, the country will spoil. And now that, then the Muse is the only one who can solve. So will the Muse be everywhere? So must Muse wait until 28 women have died? You know, so who is this creating these incidents? So the time has come for a police review commission, but also a review of all our security apparatus organs, the intelligence, the what and so forth. I think we need a commission now.
We have had so many commissions.
You see now, the 17 commission came with recommendations. Some of them have not even been implemented. Why? Is it not to the best interest of the country to implement those 20 years ago or so? Don't you think we need another one? with this kind of mess we find ourselves in? Now, the question then for some of us will be, if people are creating this to create their own wealth, and they're playing around with Wananchi's property and lives to have their own wealth, isn't it about time to stop filling those forms to the IGG that declaring your wealth? Declaring what? How you got that wealth? I think it should now be property, wealth to declare leaders now. Stand before your property. Today we're in Kampala Road. All your documents there. Did you take a loan? What did you do? What interest rate did? What is it? What was your salary? Did you pay taxes? That kind of thing. We don't care whose it is. Who is this? I think we need now to go property by property. Then you discover the Chitatas thing and say, did your father own industries? Where did you inherit this? How did you have wholesaler shops? How did you inherit this? That's when we shall discover that people are making a living out of the lives of ordinary citizens who are sweating, who are going about their business, and who are entitled to security. And so this is a serious phenomenon. So when the president says, maybe he got the win of it, that the police has been infiltrated by criminals, clean your police, and then he's the very one again to bring Kale Kayihura on board. Now, if you're already satisfied that there's criminality in the police under Kale Kayihura, why do you bring his name again to Parliament? Who are you fooling? Who are you deceiving here?
Okay,
now,
let me
at the end of the day,
lines
you open the lines.
so that Ugandans can tell us what they think, what they have been able to witness, perhaps the information they have, and how we can get out.
The recent actions
where
are
we
welcome,
The numbers are on your screen.
in as long as they can go far enough.
I'll take about 2 or 3.
If they remain short,
Okay.
it may be dangerous because you're pushing this big stone.
David, let me take the first call online because
Okay.
I have so many now waiting. I have a call online. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Anything.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm called George, calling from Brazil.
George, is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
All right, you're on air. Go right ahead, George.
And this is a very sensitive and interesting topic.
Uh-huh.
But the one thing which for us as Ugandans take from it, we are really so interested in it because the start of the foreign of the dynasty, that one that about it. And secondly, for us as ordinary Ugandans, given the hardships we are going through, if there is a fear like this of an insecurity situation like this, I think it benefits us.
How do you benefit from it? George, how do you benefit from insecurity?
You've just been told how some people make money out of it and build houses.
What I'm trying to point out,
Yes, David, George.
in a dictatorship like this, if laws happen to be working really, things will be in big part. But you see, Uganda is one country where there is no rule of law. After studying a situation where if the laws were really in place and really working, I think we would all be in prison.
All right, thank you very
The
much.
first thing we can talk about is this when there is actually no law in place. They can give really.
George, you really want anarchy, George, don't you? Okay, thank you very much, George. Let me pick another caller online. I have a call online. Hello? 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 Okay, seems to be having a technical issue there, but I'll get them as they come in. George is saying maybe, what do you make of that? That let it be, let us be like this. Perhaps maybe it can be the end of what he called the dynasty of sorts or something like that. But
I would like to believe that the president is innocent in this matter. Maybe the handlers of the president who could be responsible for some of this. But you've heard that the president puts money in some of these things innocently, maybe to achieve his goals, but then doesn't know how his money is misused to reward these criminals and create these structures which undermine the official structures of the state who are mandated constitutionally to do the security. And then they take away power from the constitutional organs to these informal groups who become so powerful and touchable. So thank goodness that at least now there is some action. And where this action will go, will it create a stalemate or will the positive elements in the security system asserting themselves take the upper hand, and these criminals will be on the run, including their allies within the security apparatus, will be picked and so forth and put in their rightful place. So if that happens, then we have a bright future. If it becomes a hurting stalemate, then it is worse for us. Or if the criminals get back an upper hand, and then you see that we are in trouble. So it is how this matter is managed from now on. I'm just looking at those scenarios, 3 scenarios.
Okay, Tolit, an element of poverty, unemployment, and economic hardship, could this be the things that are pushing us against the wall?
Yeah, true. I think it is important that we understand these push factors. And sometimes you might want to ask again, why now? Look at Kampala city in the last 5 years. I wish we could have some statistics, some in-depth statistics, looking at not only the type of crimes, but also even who is committing this crime, including disaggregated showing us whether they're male, they're female, the age, and so that we can draw some graphs. Because I'll tell you this, any cosmopolitan, if you're measuring growth, sociologists will tell you that crime begins man-faced. They begin to say there is no surprise about this. So, is Kampala pushing upwards to an extent that crime is beginning to show on the cracks just as a result of growth in the city? The bureaucrats at KCC, are they understanding these trends? Are they beginning to change their psyche in terms of policy? Because, for instance, look at the informal settlements. You see, that's why I told you security is a complex thing. There is an issue of housing. There's an issue of transport. Like one type of crime that is now common is, say, for instance, women losing their bags or phones to border people. By nature of their disposition, that you have to carry your bag on your shoulder or on your hand. Supposing we had a fairly working public transport system, would the nature of crime be different? And then the other question. They have mooted about keeping border away from the central business district. And up to now, they seem to arrive to a decision. Another time, no. What are the issues? So, true.
The stage is 2.5 million.
The other,
somebody lose that stage.
the other variables at play are key.
Okay, our time is almost out. So, beginning with you, David Egesa, to give your parting shot, your concluding remark on the show tonight.
I would request those concerned, from the president to the generals he has appointed to run security, to redesign the security direction so that maybe they take it back to where the colonialists left us, where we had counterintelligence on officers. Every officer was accountable. If you're not accountable, then you're investigated. Whatever you do, whatever you have, whatever you own is followed. Because in the situation, people are trying to get rich in the process, and you can see that what you're having is not me, I would term it as thuggery in the criminalistics. This thuggery where people tend to find insecurity to be a way of earning, and then they go irate and it becomes business. So it can be curtailed if the system, if the administrators wake up now and change the mind and redesign it to be so that it is not a one-man's game, but it is a kind of a consensus of some other people who are trained in this type of field.
Okay, Peter Kankaka, your concluding remark.
I would like to thank the president for finding out that the police was infiltrated first and taking action. And I would request him to borrow more heads of his own people. Because if he doesn't do so, his own system, his own empire he has built since he liberated people.
Tomorrow is making 32 years.
Tomorrow is making 32 years. As he makes 32 years, I want to remind him that he needs to borrow many of the heads of the people he has been working with. Secondly, why do you create structures, give them power, and don't allow them to use it? September 9th, 2013, KCC tried to register borders. You know what happened that day? as the cases here align the registration officials, Kitata unleashed his dragons and they beat up all of the people that were registering border borders, and he routed the registration logistics. Why would you empower a given sector to deal with something? You set rules and structures, and as well come back and fish back their power, assign it to people who don't know how you run your structures. Now, the army is the only remaining credible institution here, because I don't upload it because it got involved here, but I upload it because it even checked the police officers themselves. Now everyone is looking at the army almost for everything, including checking the simple thuggery has been talking about. As the Kanka Kapita from the border industry, the riders are very okay with everything. They would want to pay taxes. They contribute a lot. One single motorcycle pays PSV. Motor third party is bought at millions. Some of them obtain them on loans and pay them 80 millions. A normal tuku-tuku, you know tuku-tuku, that thing that takes 3 people, is now 15 million, imagine. You know how the Indians are extorting money without them being checked? So the president has brought investors. He has allowed investors to steal from us. He has allowed them to take any money now in the border industry. Now, my last remarks, because we are caught up by time. As the riders there are celebrating the fall of that given empire, we would request the president to align these guys to court as well, because they are keeping them somewhere, and after a matter of somewhere in a discussion, they will release them back to the public. We would want them to be tried in court and pay exactly what they have inflicted on the people. That would be my last remark. And definitely, if the courts of judiciary release these people back without them being checked, that calls for maybe mob justice would look to be justice.
David, your parting shot.
It is sad because now it started like these groups helping the police to combat crime. In the minds of the IGP and the police and the president and those political, their concept of crime is not the concept of crime of Wananchi. Their concept of crime is this opposition. Is the best you're passing here, going to a bank, is that's their level of crime. Now, because if they were helping the police to fight crime, how come Chifesi, Pocket Pickety is not dying and you are working with them? Which crime have they helped you? Is it help you to secure a rigged election? Help you to keep the opposition under check through crude methods? And then you cannot link it to the police. You can only link it to this informal group, which has no identity. Now, they have gone very far, even to come to try to interfere with judicial process in marking the court. Who are these? Even now coming to, like, they are protecting Kadaga. Did Kadaga even solicit their support in the court? Did Kadaga mobilize them? I doubt. But they want to be seen to be doing a good job as a cover for their criminality. And because they are working with certain elements of the police, and then there's no tear gas that day, it's all locked under key, because those who keep the keys are away. So you don't see them being tear gassed. When others come, they are tear gassed. When these ones come, so the issue is that it has reached dangerous levels. And the point now that let those who have put their foot down, and let the government, in fact, I would even ask the president to do his reshuffle, whether of the cabinet or even of security apparatus, and get people who can sit there fully in their chairs, not sitting halfway, and take decisions. Come what may. This is about this country. It's not about you. So then, about taking to court, let's see the due process. Let these matters be concluded in court. Let witnesses come. Open public hearings. Because when you saw Wananchi celebrating and burning down these things, it is telling you that Kumbe people are suffering under these guys. And now, how will justice and peace?
Actually, Wananchi are the ones who are burning those things?
I tell you, Chief, because he has just told you that the owners of borders who are confiscated, wrongly taken from them, their money taken, they extorted and so forth. So justice coming. and they took the law into their own hands to go and retrieve their own motorcycles from being, they know where they
If in that office,
where they have
if
kept.
in that office there's evidence that can implicate me in a crime, can't I also?
Now, of course, there are also those who did that. That's bad. So the point I'm saying that if you take that as an example, what does it tell you by conclusion? So the point I'm making here is that peace and justice are two sides of the same coin. On this side is justice, the other side is peace. If this operation is only to normalize and bring peace, and there's no justice, that peace will collapse.
Thank you very much, David. Mr. Tolit, your parting shot, very briefly.
Yeah, very briefly, I want to still affirm to the fact that there is a fairly distinct relationship between security or insecurity and crime. And I think it is very, very important for the leadership of the country to make sure that they take time, particularly the officers involved, to try and reinstill confidence in the public, because security is very much an attitude and a public perception issue. So, like David suggests, if there are issues for the judiciary, for the courts, let the public information officers come out, because like it's argued in law, justice should be done
And be seen to be done.
and be seen to be done. We ought to see those processes.
Exactly.
And finally, I think globalization is here with us. They are push factors world over. And I think security starts with the individual at certain times and ends with the individual. Complacency amongst the public, I think, is also another factor that needs to be investigated. Because, first of all, how would somebody like the men who we are discussing, and fairly so, probably until the time he goes through court's due process,
He's a suspect.
he's a suspect, and we should fairly treat him in this case. But the point is that there must be pedigree in society. Kitata, a politician of Rubaga, what does that language say? If you're a politician, you're a politician. And society must have a certain way of checking you. Because we have many guys who are popping up from offshoots, you know, the cowboy style. And tomorrow is a national figure and is being discussed. And I think that is the malaise in the progress of our politics and our geopolitical system.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Otia Tolit is the security expert. Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Kankaka from the Border Century Riders Association.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, David Egesa, private investigator.
I hope ADF has also been arrested in this city, in this operation, because we are told that ADF is the one who's been responsible for most of these killings.
And David
today,
Purko.
sorry.
Thank you very much, and all of you have been a part of this. I have confidence that this will not spiral out of control. I have confidence that the security organs will rein in the criminal elements and restore order in this country. Good night, and God bless Uganda.